How's she going, boys? Mike here. Welcome back to Grampie's workshop. I'm glad you dropped by. Some more work being done on that little 3.5 horsepower vertical shaft Briggs & Stratton engine. Last episode we lapped the valves. That turned out pretty nice and I was really pleased with the way that worked out. So what we're up to this week is we have to check the valve clearances. So I'm going to set up and show how the valve clearances can be measured, and or how I would do that. And also a little talk about what happens if the valve timing gets out of whack, and we'll install the valve springs. So that's what we're going to try to cover today. Just as I'm assembling this again, I want to talk a little bit about this valve timing. If we look here, the timing mark on the timing gear that's on the crankshaft lines up with this indentation on the camshaft. Okay, at this point the piston is down, both valves are closed. So in a 4-stroke engine, when that's the case, when the piston comes up, we have compression, right? Compression, and then spark, and then it drives the cylinder down, and both valves are still closed at this time. And then the exhaust valve opens, so then as the piston comes up, we're exhausting the cylinder. The piston's coming up now, so we're exhausting that gas out the cylinder. And then, top dead center, the exhaust valve closes. The intake valve opens now as the piston goes back down. It draws the air-fuel mixture in. Bottom of the piston stroke. The intake valve closes. We have compression again. And then we have spark. We have power stroke going down as the piston goes down. Then the exhaust valve opens to allow, when the piston comes up, to allow the exhaust to escape. So I'm just going to show you what would happen if we were out of time. So I'm just going to put this in some random spot, right? So now the timing is not correct. Now both valves are closed. We're coming down. That should be compression or power stroke, right? Going down. And now as it comes up, we should have an exhaust valve opening, but the exhaust valve is opening, but it's late. So we're not going to fully exhaust our cylinder completely. And now we should be having some intake happening now, but we're not. But the exhaust valve is closing. We're almost at the bottom of the stroke now and the intake valve opens. So now we have intake. And we get up here and now they're both closed. And now this is the power stroke. And it goes down, but it starts to come back up again before the intake valve opens. So what I'm trying to demonstrate there is, if your valve timing gets off, the engine may still work, but it's not going to be operating correctly. It wouldn't nearly have as much power. It'll sound weird. It'll just, if you can even get it started, because the compression is not going to be there when you need the compression for your spark. So anyways, the gist of all that little demonstration was just to say that valve timing is critical. So make sure you get the valve timing set correct. So I'm going to take this cam out again, turn my crank around here until I get my valve timing mark, which is right there. Get that set up to about where I want it. Find the timing mark on the cam and then set that down in here and line those marks up. Just like so. So now we're back being timed. Okay, so we've got everything reassembled here, and now what I want to do is check my valve clearance. The valve clearance here for the intake and for the exhaust valve. When the valve is fully seated, you measure the gap between the valve stem and the tappet, right here. So how do we know when the valve is properly seated? I don't have a manual on this, but when I was doing some research on the internet, I discovered that the way you can do that is you turn your engine until we're at just past top dead center on the power stroke. So as the piston's going down, the intake opens, so I'm intake. Piston's coming up. Both valves are closed. So this is compression. So this is top dead center on the compression stroke. So now just in fact, what it said on the when I was researching on the internet, it says keep turning until the piston goes 1/4 of an inch below the top of the cylinder. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set my vernier here for 0.25, just about there. So I'm going to measure that. It's got to go down a little more. That looks like it about there. Okay, so 1/4 of an inch past top dead center on compression stroke. Both of these valves now should be closed. So now what I can do is I can get my my gauge, and when I was another thing I found when I was doing research is the intake valve, the clearance should be between 5 and 7 thou. The exhaust valve should be between 9 and 11. So what I'm going to try and aim for is maybe about 6 thous here, 6 thou of an inch. So I get my little feeler gauge here, and it's hard to see that, but I think that says 6 thou. So if we check this with our vernier, yes, 6 thou. So I'm going to hold the valve tight with my finger on the top and try to insert my feeler gauge, and that won't even go in there. So that's telling me that, actually listen to this. Did you hear that crank down? That's telling me that the little bit that I ground off this valve is allowing that stem to come down closer to the tappet so that there's no clearance there. That's why I needed to have the tappets out of the crank case while I was seating the tappet. So, alright, so now how do we overcome that problem? On this valve, what we're going to have to do is grind some off the end of the valve stem. And the way I plan on doing that is I'm going to just take it on the grinder, and I'm going to very gently brush the top of this against the stone to grind that off, and I want to grind it flat, and then I'll just take a little bit, check it again, take a little bit, check it again, and I just want to do that till I sneak up on it. Okay, so grinding on the side of the stone is not recommended, but I don't want to take a whole pile off of this, so I just did a little grind on it there, trying to keep it as flat as I can. Now I'm going to put this back in and check it. Okay, let's see what I can measure here now. So back on the 6 thou. No, still won't go in. So that's good. At least I didn't grind too much off. So I'm going to go regrind it again, and we'll try it. Okay, so I've ground that I think 3 times altogether. I didn't want to take too much off it, right? Because if you make it too short, then what do? So now we'll try this again, and once more with the 6 thou gauge. So the 6 thou gauge now goes in there, just nice tight fit. So that should be good for the intake. Now the exhaust is supposed to be 10 thou. So we'll get 10 thou out here. A 6 and a 4 ought to make 10 thou. Let's just check it. 0 our vernier. 10 thou. Okay. And I expect this one's going to be tight too. Yeah, it is. So I'm going to grind this one the same manner I did on the intake. So we'll be right back. So once again I ground this I think 3 times. I just take a little bit off it at a time, right? Because I was afraid to make it too short. So we insert that. Our piston is 1/4 inch past top dead center. So tappets should be down as far as they can go. 10 thou for a feeler gauge, and it should be between 9 and 11 thou, so this should be good. And that's just a nice rub in there. So I think we got our valves ground pretty good. So next step then is to put the valve springs in there. The valve springs are different. The exhaust spring is different from the intake spring. So I had marked them there, and what we have is we have a spring, and then we have what they call a keeper. The keeper is just a little notched piece, and when we take this valve out, we'll see that the spring is going to go over here. This keeper is going to go over the valve, slide on to this notch at the end of the valve stem, and then that holds the spring in place. It's pretty tricky to get the valve springs in, so what I have here is a valve compression tool, and this is made by Briggs & Stratton. And when I was doing this job, what I did was I ordered this tool special for the job because I wanted to be able to do it. So that's what we're going to do. So we set the valve springs in here with the keeper in place. Alright, so then you just, once you get that in there, you crank this down to compress it. And what you want to make sure is the opening on the keeper here is aligned up so that as you slide that in, just by pulling the tool out, it will lock it. So what we want to do is turn that keeper around a little bit. I think what I'm going to do is set it something like that. I'll just show you here. So the opening, the wide opening is back out towards the handle. So as I put that in and put it on the valve, I'll just pull it out. When I pull it out, the natural motion of me pulling it out will set that keeper on the valve stem. Alright, so let's try it. We put the tool in here, we put the valve in place, making sure that the valve comes down through the spring and then through the keeper. I think it's got to go a little bit more compressed. And we pull it out. Pull that back towards you, and then you can take compression off the spring, the compressor tool, and pull it out, and then we have our valve in place. So to examine to make sure that's properly in place, you can see that the keeper is holding it on the bottom and that the spring is set there pretty good. Now we'll do the same with the exhaust. Okay, so we'll loosen this up a little. Put the keeper in. And then compress it. This is a simple little tool, but boy, it makes this job a lot easier. And we take our valve out, put our tool in, down through the valve, and make sure that the keeper is locked on the stem, and then release the tension. And there we have it. Now that took me, I don't know, that's the first time really I used that tool. It took me probably 3 or 4 minutes to put those in. If you never had this tool, you'd have been fighting with those for a week, and you probably still wouldn't have them in. So there's exhaust, piston up, valve closed. Intake opens, piston down, both valves close, compression, spark, power stroke, both valves still closed, piston coming up for exhaust. So I had a little demo there about what would happen if your valves were to get out of timing. And this is not ignition timing, this is valve timing. And the chances of valves getting out of timing a little engine like this, I think, are 0 to none. But if it were to happen, you know, I was always wanting to do that for my own benefit, just to see what sort of scenario would take place inside the engine. And now I saw that, so that I'm happy with that. And then we had to grind the valve stems to make sure that I got the clearance correct. And I ground those on the emery wheel on the bench grinder, and I was on the side of the wheel, and that's sort of a no-no. You should not use the side of the wheel, but I was going at it so light and gentle that it wasn't a big deal. Or I didn't think it was. And we got them right. The measurements were right, because I came up on the measurement nice and slow and easy. Just took a little bit at a time, put it in, measure it. Takes a little bit of time, but it's better to do that than to grind your valves too short. And then we put the valve springs in with that Briggs & Stratton valve compressor tool. Valve spring compressor tool. I don't know how you do this job without it. So if you're ever interested in doing engine work, small engine work like this, it'd be worth your while to get yourself a valve spring compressor tool. It just makes the job so easy. Anyways, hey, if you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm so glad you dropped by. It's always nice to have new viewers come to the channel, and I hope you leave a comment and let me know that you're new and what you think of the video. And my regular viewers, you know, you amaze me every week where you comment and support the channel the way you do. So I hope everybody gives me a thumbs up too, you know, if you didn't like the video, how about give me a thumbs up anyways, because there's no sense both of us being disappointed. Anyways, everybody, have a great week. You know, spring is coming, the sun is coming out now more than it's not, I hope, and that's a sign of nothing but goodness. So take care, everyone, have a great week, and we'll talk to you.